Vancouver Startup Week team. Today, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we're grateful to be gathered virtually on Indigenous land, regardless of where you're joining us from. At my home here in Vancouver, I'm grateful to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. I'm privileged to live, work, and play on these lands. Thank you for joining us for VSW 2021, and welcome to today's session, Optimizing and Enjoying Virtual Networking, hosted by Build Your Dream Network. This session is part of the VSW Founder Track and is proudly supported by Sage Accounting. Sage knows that you didn't start your business to become an accountant. Sorry to any of our accountants in the room. And Sage Accounting keeps your business organized and running smoothly. Track your cash flow, send out invoices, and get paid quickly. Visit the Sage Accounting booth to access free guides and templates for starting your business finances the right way. And if you head there, you get an exclusive VSW discount if you're finally ready to switch from Excel. For today's sessions, please feel free to use the chat and use the Q&A within the Whova platform so that we can include those as part of today's session. You can also upvote your questions in the Q&A section on Whova. And with that, I'll pass the mic over to our session host, Kelly, and we'll begin. Over to you, Kelly.
Thank you so very much. It's awesome to be here and awesome to be with everyone. I'm going to keep this really super practical and actionable. So if you haven't grabbed a piece of paper and a pen, do that now. That would be a good idea. And if you've got that paper and pen, here's what I need you to do. I need you to take that piece of paper and I want you to divide it into 3 vertical columns. On the top of the first column, I want you to put who. In the middle column, I want you to put what. And in the third column, put how. Who, what, how. And then just put that piece of paper aside for a second, and we're going to come back to it. All right, this is when that chat function and questions and Whova comes into play. What the heck brought you here today? What is the big burning networking issue challenge question that you have? Could you please put that in the chat? And my buddy here, Leanne, is going to monitor that so we can see what it is and what the commonalities are so that we can address those. In the meantime, a quick little bit about me, because why on earth do you want to listen to this person on virtual networking? It's not just because she wrote this book, Build Your Dream Network. Not just because I am Canadian, I'm from Victoria, British Columbia, and have a law degree from UBC. Warning, I have lived in New York since 1998, so you're going to get a little Canadian crossed with a New Yorker, and that can be an interesting combination, I can tell you right now. Here's why I want you to listen to me on this stuff. As someone who writes about and whose career has been transformed by networks, I eat my own dog food. I am not going to tell you to do something that I wouldn't do myself. This is not do as I say, not as I do. This is the kind of stuff I have done. This is the things that I see other people doing that have successfully moved their project, career, ambition forward. So there we have it in a nutshell. So I said, I'm Canadian, law degree from UBC, practiced in Toronto, moved to New York as a lawyer, knew 5 people, one of them my ex-husband, the other 4 were his friends. Kind of transformed my network, and that's when you get all this other kind of crazy stuff where opportunities have come to me because people know what I do, know what I care about, and there's absolute clarity on that. And every single day, I'm doing something to enhance my network. That's the trick. Show up. That's why on earth you should listen to me. And hopefully I've convinced you at this point. So let's talk virtual networking. And Leanne, you just raise your hand and you let me know if you've got all sorts of stuff there in the chat. You know, some of the things people have said, why they're here today, what's their big burning issues.
That's just a quick reminder to everyone that is watching. drop a note in the chat. Let us know your questions about networking. Why did you join us today? I see that Amy is saying hello to everyone. Hi, Amy. Hi, everyone. Drop your points in the chat.
Yeah, because, you know, you don't want to come afterwards and say, oh, I had this question. This is your chance in real time to get answers. Okay. So virtual networking, how to, you know, maximize this, how to enjoy it, how not to be like, oh my God, I'm going to be so glad when we don't have to do this anymore. Guess what? It's here to stay. It's not going away. It hasn't been going away for the last decade. My book came out in 2017, but some of the stuff I'm going to talk to you about, I have been, well, I've been on that soapbox, I would say, at least a decade now. Here's the thing, with networking in our new reality, you need to be amphibious. What do I mean by that? You need to be able to build relationships online so that you can take them offline and vice versa. It is just another piece in our network relationship building journey. And when I say amphibious, who you are online should not be any different than who you are offline. Don't tell me you're building your personal brand online that is in some way any different than the person who I might sit next to and have a chat with. I want it to be the same person. The funniest thing I ever had once was someone said to me, you're much taller than your Twitter avatar. I'll take it as a compliment. That what they were really saying was that I was the same person. You got Kelly. It wasn't filtered. It wasn't some pretty picture. It wasn't some imaginary person. Be the same person and understand context matters. So it's not offline versus online. It is both. How are you making them work in tandem and together? When you're thinking about online networking, I want you to really emphasize context. Let's take an example. Let's say you're startup. All right, let's say you're starting a company. How would you explain it to a bunch of other startup founders? How did you explain it to your friends? How would you explain it to your family? How would you explain or make the announcement to industry peers and professionals that you don't know so well? Same news, same you, same story, but you wouldn't tell it the same way. The way you would talk to your family around the dining room table is not the same as if you announce to industry peers, colleagues, maybe some former colleagues from your old industry. It's not the same way you would announce it to them that you're starting a company. Well, that's the difference between what? LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. How you tell your friends, your closest friends, you're doing something. It's like, you know, going to the great cocktail party and sitting there and having a drink on Twitter. Come on, it's that. Really contextualize it and think about how you're sharing and engaging with people and what the mindset and the personality are as the best ways to maximize these. So for me, you know, I used to be a lawyer. When I think about LinkedIn, you know, I want to grab my briefcase, my pantyhose, and you know, my starched shirt. Walk back to Bay Street. That's when I think about getting on LinkedIn, because that's what it is. Do I care what people had for lunch? No, unless they are a professional chef or a recipe tester or a cookbook author. I don't see that in my LinkedIn stream. I want things that are going to improve my business, are going to help me on a professional development, or relate somehow into the context of career and business. I don't want to see that other stuff there. I don't want the casual language of Twitter because they've also posted to LinkedIn. I can assure you right now, those are the ones that I mute in my feed on LinkedIn. Right? Twitter, as I said, it's the great cocktail party. How are you the good guest? How are you somebody else wants to invite into a conversation? How is a like or a retweet any different than if we were at a party and you nodded in terms of something I said? Hey, good point, Kelly. How's that any different than a retweet? How is, hey, you should come and listen to this conversation. It's really interesting. Like that's a retweet with a comment. Follow people, engage, think, how do I get into the conversation? How do I extend the conversation? How do I make it that other people are looking forward to seeing me? And if you are the type of person who, let's stay on Twitter and the cocktail party banter for a minute. If you are the type of person who runs into parties screaming all sorts of news about yourself, well, that's a bigger issue than how you tweet. Let's just put it that way, right? You want to engage with people. And on that, if anybody at any time in Vancouver Startup Week if you're entering any of these conversations on WOVA, and the first thing you're doing is saying, hey, everyone, let's connect on LinkedIn, and putting your LinkedIn, profile, please tell me, like, do you do that in person? Like if we met in a bar, is that the first thing you'd say to me? Probably not. So don't do it on social platforms. We're human beings behind our profiles. We want to engage with other human beings. Enough said on that one. Let's talk about some ideas to engage your community online. Well, let me give you an example from Creative Mornings, the global community for creative professionals. If you've ever attended any of their events in person, it's probably not going to come as a surprise to you that online, they behave the same way. They jump immediately into the chat and they introduce themselves, just as if we were standing grabbing a coffee before we grabbed our seat, before we sat down to listen to the speaker at that Creative Mornings event. People say, hey, how are you? I am. Now they share where they are in the world. When I've spoken at Creative Mornings, people have taken upon themselves to answer other people's questions. People have taken it upon themselves to find the resources. It was just an absolutely delightful surprise when I was speaking for them, and I made some reference to some resources that were on my website, and I said, I'll share them later with Creative Mornings and they can distribute them. And guess what? One of the Creative Mornings attendees did it themselves. So we didn't have to. No one asked this member of the community to do that. They just did it. And there's nothing holding back you from doing that as well. What are other ways to engage? Well, say you're attending a lot of these things and you keep seeing the same people show up. Why don't you direct message them? Looks like we both have a lot in common. We seem to show up at the same events. It'd be interesting to know more about you. Bingo. That's how you make a human connection. You know what you do with more of this engagement online? You're taking notes, you're taking in information. You go and share it with other people. Maybe you share it with team members who aren't here right now. Maybe you share it publicly with other people you think would be interested. Those are other ways to engage online. Likes, retweets, reading and posting on other people's comments and other people's posts and creating those comments. Those are other ways to engage online that don't involve you always having to be sort of this one-way sort of using of information and pushing out information all the time. Instead, engaging, conversing, indicating to other people that you're open to listening and hearing them, because that's the core of networking. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. Let me pause there. We got anybody making, are they all saying hi, or have they all just sheepishly deleted LinkedIn, request to connect?
We have a few others saying hi. We have Dave who's saying hi, and it's great to meet everyone.
Hey, good to meet everybody. Let us know, if you weren't jumping on right at the beginning when we sort of said this, why are you here? It might be you're here to say hi to everyone, which is kind of awesome, but why are you here? What was the information? There is lots of things to do in the day. You're here. to learn about networking and how you can maximize online networking and virtual networking. And so what's that burning question that brought you here, or were you just hoping you'd hear something? So let us know. I mean, don't you worry, I've got endless amounts of content. Let's go back to the who, what, how that I asked you to do at the beginning. So with networking, I kind of take a little different approach than other people. And often enough, when we think about networking, whether it is online or offline, what's the first thing we think about? We think about the thing we're going to do, the busy work, the activity, the verb. Oh, I have to get into activity, right? And we think, oh, if I do this activity, maybe I'll meet some people that I need to know and they'll help me with whatever it is I want to achieve. Yeah, equation's totally wrong there, people. You need to start with what it is, right? You're trying to achieve. So I know I told you about who, what, how. On the very top of this piece of paper, I want you to write what your major goal is right now with your startup and your venture. Are you seeking funding? Are you looking for new customers? Are there new markets you're trying to get into? Are you growing so fast you need talent? What's your goal? What is that thing you need to do? So write, okay? Got that? All right, so you go to the who column. We get things done with the help of other people. Who are the people you need to get help from? That might be some particular names. That might be some government organizations. That might be some community groups. That may be peers, right? Who is it that you need to meet? Make a laundry list. Investors is not an answer. If you put investors down, I want you to get really specific, okay? Because in the what column is what do you know about them? We think so much about networking as talking. Oh, Kelly, how am I going to introduce myself? Oh, Kelly, what's a good icebreaker question? Oh, Kelly, what events should I attend? Oh, Kelly, why aren't you using your eyes and your ears more than your mouth? Is my answer typically to those questions. What are you watching and observing? So that first column is like, who are the people you really need to connect with, who you really believe are going to help you with the goal, the outcome, what it is you're seeking to achieve. The what column is, what do you know about them? Are you following them online? Are you listening to their podcasts? Have you read their blog? Did you attend, the Vancouver Startup Week session that they participated in? Do you follow their Twitter account? What the heck do you know about them? Because it gets really important when we get to the how column. How you reach out to people, how you connect is not a one size fits all. There is not a template for reaching investors. There's not a template or a form cover letter that you can send to everybody and land a job. Everything needs to be personalized and customized. Take a little lesson from the e-commerce industry. Send people what's more like what they want, that solves their problem. Think of all the stories of when algorithms get messed up. Hey, why am I getting, what was it? The dad who found out that his daughter was pregnant because Amazon started, serving up ads for Pampers and baby stuff. And he was like, what's going on here? Oh yeah, right. Family Amazon account. Look what happened. Someone was searching for that stuff. So Think about when an algorithm serves up the wrong thing to you and you're like, God, this is stupid. Why would they give me this? Guess what other people think when you send them generic outreach? I'm going to do the face for a minute, Leanne, because, yeah. This is a lot of work. What? You can put in the work and make meaningful connections, or you can put in a lot of work and get crickets. Your choice. I'm just telling you what works. And what works is breaking down your goal into, all right, who are the people who I truly need to connect with? Because I know that these are people who likely have answers or solutions for me. And they may take my goal half a step forward, or they may take it all the way down to, you know, the finish line. Like they, you know, whatever. The what is, what do I know about them? What, you send an email off on a Monday morning, and if you actually looked at, you know, Googled their name and looked at their Facebook account, you realize that they've taken a vacation for 3 weeks. And now you know that your email that's in their inbox is going to be buried under 3 weeks worth of emails when they get back from vacation. And guess what? It probably means it's lost. So now you're going to have to send it again. And you're probably going to stress and struggle and feel like a jerk about that. But if you'd actually known something about them, you would have held off on emailing it. Obvious, right? Now that I've said it, you're like, oh, shoot, I just did that. You can still course correct. That's okay. And the how, in terms of how you network with other people and connect with them, depends on them. Your preference might be meeting for coffee. They may hate that. Do not send an email making a generic suggestion of meeting for coffee. Particularly, you know, I would have said this before a pandemic, but particularly right now. Understand what it is that the other person, like, why you need to talk to them, why they are the someone who can help you, or why you are the solution for their problem. Let them see that you truly understand their business, or you make it absolutely clear on what it is that you're seeking from them. Hey, I see you did X. I understand that you just pivoted your business into this space, and I was wondering if you could walk me through. And then let them decide, unless you have real clarity and know, hey, I see you do these weekly office hours. I saw this on your website. I've requested a time. Here's really what I want to talk to you about. Oh, I see you do a lot of mentoring through this accelerator. I didn't know if you had other time to do some mentoring. This is the question I wanted to ask you. You ask them the question, they can decide how they are going to deliver up your answer, because really that's what you're after. But then again, you may be after someone buying you a free cup of coffee, or you might be into buying other people cups of coffee, and well, find another way to, you know, scratch that itch. All right. They're probably thinking, oh Lord, we now know where the New Yorker came into the nice Canadian. Yeah, and you were nodding and laughing, and I absolutely love it. And I'm so glad that you stayed on the video just for that. It makes, you know, doing these remote, you talk about how you network online. Sometimes we need to see each other. And so I know you were like, hey, good, I wasn't going to stay on the video, but now I am. Do you have questions? What do we have from folks in the audience?
Yeah, we actually have a very specific question. Dave, who we had met via the chat, he's new to the industry and new to his role at NYIT. And he's here and wants to know, how can he develop an online brand? He's looking specifically for his organization, but I feel like we should talk about specifically for Dave, because before you can create that online brand for the organization, how can he set himself apart in those networking opportunities?
Yeah. So first off, your brand, like I sort of think your brand, your network, like some of the stuff like personal brand, you know, versus a company brand kind of thing. But even with a company, your brand, your reputation is what your network says it is. Not something you get to artificially create and say, oh, now I'm this. hey, I miss responsive, and everyone in your network's like, yeah, right, you never answer an email. So it's by your actions and behaviors. It's by how your network decides. I think particularly, I would say this with Dave, is particularly with, and maybe Dave can put in the chat, how big is the company? With startups, like every single person in your company, every person in the startup is part of building that brand. So some of the things I say to people is, first off, Google yourself, Google your startup, what shows up? Is there consistency in terms of how everyone is describing where they work and how they describe the company? Is there consistency that way? Is your company values, are your individual employees living it and sharing that with the network? Because they are your brand ambassadors, as well as your customers, as well as your clients. That's all part of your network and the extended network that can, help lift up the venture that you're doing. So one of the things, the first thing I would say, Dave, for you, for the companies, is Google everybody who works there. What shows up? Because that may be one of those cases where you need to say to everybody, and I've done this with a company that I have mentored through New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. I would like literally looked at every employee's, profile, and I'm like, we've got like 6 different descriptions, and you've only got 15 employees, but we got 6 different descriptions of what your company is and does. Let's get on board, people. And talk about building a brand. They ended up doing it and discussing what they were going to use as banners on LinkedIn and what was going to be the image on an email signature line. Your networking arsenal, people. They used that discrepancy that I uncovered that they hadn't thought about. They use that as a team building exercise to come up together with what they wanted to share and what they wanted to do, and understanding that together as a team, even if they were the engineer. Oh, I'm just the IT person. I'm not. Yes, you are. You have a LinkedIn profile. You've got a Twitter account. You're on Instagram. You're part. Your personal brand is part of our company's brand. So how you talk about us matters. How people finding you matters because it affects us. So find out what is out there, find out how you want to be talking about yourself and thinking about, right, if our company is values are XYZ, are we living it day to day? Because it doesn't matter how many press releases we put out. It doesn't matter how many times that we say we're this, that, and the other thing. If we're not actually living and breathing it and acting it, your network's going to call BS. So there is that. Here's the other thing, and I love this, Dave. Thanks, Dave. Dave, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to tell everybody, this is a little hint, whether it's in person, physically, or in person online. Here's a little tip on how to introduce yourself when you ask a question at events, because now you're going to network yourself with every single person. Hello, my name is, I am the, put in your title, what the startup is. My company does X, or we do Y, whatever it is. And then you say, my question is. So, hi, my name's Kelly Hoey. I'm the author of Build Your Dream Network. My question is, does anyone have any other questions? So Dave doesn't think I'm picking on him. That's what you do. And just before you come up with the next question, part of the reason I say this, and use this in every situation, because you command the attention of the room. When someone, like at an event, Leanne will read out, hey, I've got a question from Dave. He's the CTO of, or he's the CMO of, or he's the CEO of, and his question is, or if you're an event, you're going to say this and everyone's going to know who you are. And you're not going to get into the scenario that I watched rather awkwardly back in the day, as we say in New York, back in the day when we had an in-person event and Diane von Fostenberg, the fashion designer and entrepreneur, was on stage and was being interviewed, and she was taking questions. And someone got up to the mic and was just going on and on and on and on about how much she loved Diane and how great Diane was and how grateful she was that Diane was there. And Diane finally interrupted her and said, "Is there a question in there?" She said what we were all thinking, right? You wonder how going to get the attention. You're also going to start a conversation when you walk out of that room, because everyone else is going to look at you and say, "Dave, I had that question too. I'm so glad you asked it." Simple networking thing. All right, what you got, Leanne?
I have an interesting one that's a little bit more bringing us back to the in-person networking world. So someone from the community asks, having spent a decade away from Canada, how important is it, and this might also be a little bit of a post-COVID question, how important is a business card these days? And assuming it is, one, how much energy should be devoted into designing it? And two, when do you actually give it?
Love business cards. I do. I know some people are like, "Oh, business cards are dead." And I'm like, I don't think so. I'm glad I had a big old supply, even though I wasn't at in-person events, because sending notes to people, like, listen, during the pandemic, guess what? We know where everybody is. They're at home, right? Get someone's physical mailing address. All right, so sending someone a note, I can put my card in there. I send people copies of my book, I put my card in there. You meet someone, it's an easy way to give them your contact information. And I know you can say, "Oh, but Kelly, we could just, you're at an event and they've got crap Wi-Fi." How many of us have been in one of those? Hey, it's a tech event, the Wi-Fi doesn't work. And there's no mobile coverage. We've all been there. On the back of my card, I have, what does it say? It says, "Tell me where we met." And so people can write a little, I know in some cultures, not cool to write on business cards, but being a heathen Canadian in New York City, I'm all for it. So I have a little place in the back for people to kind of tell me how we met, so that you can write a prompt and a reminder and put it on there. So I just think it's easy as a way to hand it over. In terms of getting business cards, I love moo.com. Moo as in the cow, moo.com.
Perfect. Gave everyone time, including myself, to write down moo.com. I actually have a great comment from Vivian Cham, who attended your 2018 session at Vancouver Startup Week, where you said it was important to learn how to play golf when it comes to networking and closing deals. She's excited to let you know that she's learning.
Hey, let me give you everyone else. They're like, "Golf? Hoey, what are you talking about?" All right, let me give the backstory on that. I had a fabulous mentor in Toronto when I was practicing law. And after a really big restructuring insolvency, it was actually the restructuring of Cadillac Fairview. And we went for lunch afterwards, and he said to me, "Hey, Kelly, do you like what you're doing?" I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Do you notice anything about the bankruptcy bar in Toronto?" And I was like 24 at the time. And this guy was in his late 50s. And I looked at him, I said, "Yeah, they're old white guys like you." I'd go to court, there'd be 200 people, there'd be 2 women, swear to God. So, some of the discrepancies in the startup world, been there, seen that, anyhow. And my mentor said to me, "Yeah, and we all golf. The question is, Kelly, do you play golf?" And I looked at him, I said, "I guess I'm going to learn." He said, "Good answer. I'll actually teach you how to play golf. There's the reason why I want you to learn how to play golf. This is where, in the insolvency community in Toronto, this is where the deals happen. This is how people get hired. This is where the trustees in bankruptcy pick their next lawyers. If you're not in that room, I can't give you the work." He made it transparent to me where the networking happened for at that particular point in time with that specific industry that I was in. And it behooves all of you to sit back and say, how are decisions made and how do I get into that room? Or how do I create my alternative to that room so that I can build the relationships that my startup, my venture, my career needs? Fast forward, I shared that story in a blog post. If you ever look at my profile and think, why has Kelly done all that speaking with the PGA of America? Guess why? The PGA of America found that blog post. So my dad, who was the avid golfer, yet trust me, grew up in Victoria and I learned to play golf in Toronto. Yes, I gave my father a whole lot of grief about that. I'm sorry, growing up in a city where I could golf 12 months a year, I don't learn it until I moved to Toronto where you can play 4 months a year. So I wrote this blog post about it. PGA picked it up, and I have been to more PGA championships, enough to make my father very angry that I've never invited him. My retribution for him not teaching me golf as a child. What else we got?
For the most part, just taking a look, I think we've answered everyone's questions so far. Everyone that's watching, be sure to drop your questions in the Q&A, post your comments in the chat. Do you golf? That's a great one that we can ask everyone. But with that, I'm a little curious to find out more about, now that we've learned the who and the what, the how.
The how is always with the other person. How you connect with someone depends on them. Your goal in networking is to be heard. Your goal in networking is to make a connection with someone else. Making a suggestion that suits you and disregards the other person. Plan, right? And you may be saying, oh, Kelly, I asked them a specific question and they sent me to a blog post. I didn't get to talk to them. What am I going to do? Networking gets a bad name when we approach it as a one and done transaction. So they gave you the answer. Go and read the blog post. What are your takeaways from it? What can you learn from that you can go back to them and say, thank you so much for recommending that blog post. Damn, I wish I'd found it before I emailed you in the first place because I would have asked you this question now that I've read the blog post. See, you can start a conversation. And you can start the path to building a relationship with someone, which is more likely to get you the answers and the outcome and the resolution you're looking for than, a one and done meeting. Yeah, you're going to put in some time and you got to put in some effort into this thing called networking. But some of the effort you need to put in is not that hard. If you think about the way you like to be treated and communicated with, look at everything you send out through the same eyes. If you would hit delete if someone sent you that sort of email, why are you sending them out? I know. Someone asked me once, what's the trick with networking? I'm like, don't be a jerk. Clearly, a lot of people didn't get that memo. And at the end of the day, you want these deeper relationships. You want people who have got your back. Want people who are going to be responsive to you because you have approached them in a way that is considerate. Even if they can't help you, they might respond in the future because they have that feeling that, yeah, you're not just doing a spray and pray trying to find any single investor out there. One of my friends had she was working on her startup for 11 years between a really, okay, sorry if there's any kids listening, a really shitty investor and then the pandemic. After 11 years, she had to shut down her venture and, declare bankrupt it and write it all off. She's based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Not exactly the VC, startup hub like Silicon Valley or New York City or Boston. Yet because of how she interacts with people, being based, and like I said, based in Albuquerque. She's been virtually networking with power brokers for the last 12, 13 years. Because of how she interacts with people, she calls 2 or 3 of the biggest investors in the US like mentors. And I know if she was to email Brad Feld, he would respond immediately. How do you treat people? So the how is always about them. Your what is like your goal is to be heard. Your goal is to have your question answered. Your what is also your empathy. What do you understand about that other person? How can I show them that I've actually paid attention to what they need or who they are? And how, by doing that, can I increase my chances of getting the answer I need? Listen, this is why networking is hard in a minute. There's not an easy like, hey, Kelly, what's the formula? You've already heard the formula. Don't be a jerk. Network's hard because you have to deal with human beings. And you just have to take a quick glance online to see that we are squirrely and weird. And we say one thing one day and one thing the next, and we want this hour and something else another hour. Look at yourself in the mirror. You can't tell me that you're not that way as well. So you have to deal with human beings. So you really have to delve into who is this other person? What is my best way to interact and approach them? That's your how. Hopefully, come on, let's get some more questions here. This session was always designed to be interactive.
I have a little bit more of another question, kind of stemming off some of the other discussions that we had. When it comes to networking, you had given us that great formula of who, your name, your role, and the question. Let's say, for instance, the individual has since left their position and they are always known as maybe Leanne from Vancouver Startup Week. How do you differentiate yourself at a future networking event when that's what everyone associates you by?
That's what I'm gonna say. That's when you get to, I'm gonna say, sort of educate your network. And that is often really, really hard because people know you in a certain, position. I mean, part of the reason to Google yourself to see what shows up is, if you're not keeping your online profiles up to date, if you're not thinking about what is it that I am posting and talking about, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snap, whatever, LinkedIn, if you're not curating that, if you're not keeping it up to date, your network may keep going back to what you did before because that's what they know you for. If your network keeps coming to you with respect to a skill set or a job that you used to do, that's a good time to think, why do they still have this erroneous impression of what I'm up to? Because it's up to you in ways to educate them. Let me give you a funny example. She probably is the most senior woman on Wall Street. She is most definitely the most senior Black woman on Wall Street, a woman by the name of Carla Harris. And she showed this in a Maker's video. She shared that she was told she wasn't getting promoted because she wasn't tough enough. And she's like, all right, I got to start being tough. I got to start talking tough. I got to start using tough language so they know I'm tough. And so one of the things that she was always sought out for in the company was to give feedback on pitch decks and giving feedback on presentations. And particularly with some of the emerging technology companies and other investments that Morgan Stanley was making. So when someone would reach out to her and say, hey, Carla, we got another pitch deck. We've got this. Could you review it? What she wouldn't just say, oh, sure, I've no problem. When do you want to schedule it? Or schedule it with my secretary. That'd be great. She'd pause and she'd say, tell me about who's doing the presentation. Because I give really tough feedback and I want to make sure that this person is not, going to get offended when I give some harsh, tough criticism. She started peppering in this language. And she knew that she had changed the perception when she was walking to a meeting, back when people went into offices. She was walking to a meeting and the people who were going to give the presentation couldn't see that she was coming around the corner, but she could hear them. And the senior director, this dude, was looking at his gathered minions and he's like, do we have this together? Do we have everything we need? Because Carla's really tough. So if people have got the wrong impression of what you're doing, ask yourself, am I fueling that in any way? And how do I course correct that? On the flip side of this, if you're unsure where your career should go or what you should be doing, maybe you're at that pivot point with your career in the startup world, or you're here watching this video and you're part of Vancouver Startup Week because you're thinking, I'm going to leave that corporate job and go do something with a startup, whatever else. Listening to what your network asks from you. What do they seek you out for? What information do they want from you? Is a really good way to figure out what your superpower is. Again, your network often, is the one to tell you what your brand is. It's the one to tell you what your superpower is. They may see more in you than you see in yourself. Another friend who had a long career on Wall Street got laid off with the financial crisis in 2007, as she said, or 2009. She's like, I hadn't been out of a job since I was, 12 years old, right? I'm in my mid 50s. Like, what the heck, right? So she's in outplacement and someone said something and Joyce responded with, oh, I'm not a marketer. And 20 people in the room went, yeah, you are. She's thinking, I'm a finance back room, like marketer. She's like, all of a sudden, she's like, I need to pay attention to this. All these people are saying this. Maybe there is something hidden that I don't know. So, that's one of the things in terms of changing that perception or listening and saying, wow, there's something here. Maybe I should do something with it. Hope that answers that question. Awesome. We got any more questions in there?
Taking a look at the chat and at the Q&A, just a reminder to everyone that's watching, if you have a question for Kelly, maybe that burning question that you're too afraid to ask, be sure to post it in the Q&A or in the chat. You have a great resource to ask your questions to. I don't want to spend the entire rest of the time asking all of mine, but I guess I might as well stem with another question.
Go for it, girlfriend.
Kind of piggybacking on our last one. Knowing that you had just said, ask your network, they're the ones who develop your brand. How important would you say LinkedIn recommendations are for a personal brand in your personal networking?
I'd be selective. I don't think people pay a lot of attention to them, honestly. So, like if you can get one from someone who maybe is, I don't know, someone who you've worked with that other people would be like, whoa, hold on a minute here. They've got a recommendation from that person. Or if you want to show a real, like if one of your things is, I'm a team player, maybe you want to show recommendations from a variety of people, not just, because we often think recommendations, oh, it's going to be, the gray-haired fool at the top. But maybe you say, you know what? One of my strengths is this team building and team cohesion and being this team player. I'm going to show in the recommendations on LinkedIn that I've got that because I've had interns and others. And when I apply for jobs that say I'm a team player, I'm going to say, which is as evidenced by the public recommendations I have from a variety of colleagues I've worked with over the years at all sorts of levels in the company or something like that. So there may be for sort of reasons like that, but just sort of as a vanity metric and just to have them because it's going to do something, make them meaningful as opposed to kind of trying to collect them. I think that's my message on that one.
Perfect. And then with that, what would be your one best practice, one best tip, if there's one thing for our audience to take away from today's presentation of how to optimize and more importantly, enjoy virtual networking, what is that one golden nugget that they should always keep in mind?
Well, on networking online, remember we're human beings. There might be an avatar there, but we're a human being. So treat everyone as a human and don't think, oh, well, this is how I behave online, but this is what I'm like if we met in person, Kelly. It should be absolutely the same engagement. So just because you can follow someone, just because you can like and talk to them doesn't mean that you immediately get to be their friend in the real friend as opposed to the friend sense online, right? Sometimes there is love at first sight. Sometimes there is that magical first connection, but most times we get to know people over time. So just use your common sense with engaging with other people online and treat it like as if they were standing or sitting next to you. Understand that it's not one and done when it comes to engaging online. That it's never one and done when you're in person. You're at Vancouver Startup Week. We're all here in person. You didn't get your question answered. You can follow up with me afterwards on an email, can't you? So, think of it, oh, darn, we didn't get to ask her question. Well, you can find me on Twitter and you can ask a question there. So there's my best tips, but the biggest tip is be human, please. Please, please, please.
It's just the one thing I'm now going to hear anytime I'm in that networking conversation, that trying to figure out what I'm going to say. I'm just going to hear your voice saying, be human, don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. Be human, don't be a jerk. Come on, everybody, you admit it. The next time you're in an event and someone immediately says, hey, everyone, let's connect on LinkedIn, and they put in their LinkedIn profile and they haven't said anything else, you're just going to sit there and go, oh my God. If that person walked into a party and did that, you would get the bouncer to show them the door. Or you wish you would have a bouncer so you could show them the door, unless they were maybe the host of the party, and then you could decide they could be such a jerk. But anyway.
Perfect. And with that, I'm going to do, just keeping an eye on the time, one final call for questions. I see that Charlie says, thank you, Kelly, for such a great session today. There were so many great takeaways. I personally learned a lot. Now I'm going to go Google myself and double check what pops up when my name is Googled, because who knows, I haven't done that in quite some time.
Yeah, do it when in incognito mode, and then you'll see what everybody else sees. And I mean, and this is the benefit. You have the benefit of controlling what other people find and what information is out there. So, take advantage of that. Take advantage of that. So that if you are, because let's admit it, if you're a startup, you're probably wanting to reach out to and connect with investors. If they don't know you, what's the first thing they're going to do? Even if someone recommends, hey, you know what, you should really talk to this founder. I, work in the same co-working space with them. Or, oh, wow, I met this really cool founder at Vancouver Startup Week. And, I think it's something that might fit in your portfolio. You should talk to them. What are they going to do? They're not just going to call you up. They're probably going to Google you. Does someone's recommendation, referral align with what they find online? Because if it doesn't, there's actually two people's networking reputations that have taken a hit here. The person who made the referral or the recommendation, now they look like they've lost their nut because they've recommended someone who's got, excuse my language, a shit show of an online profile. And your chance to connect with that investor is just you know, you just kind of made yourself a whole lot harder. So, you know, so some of this virtual networking, the best thing you can do is get your online profile up to snuff before you start doing a whole bunch of outreach. And they're like, oh no, she's giving, Charlie's like, I'm taking back that comment. She's giving us more work to do.
That's always the great part about events like this. So with that, I'm just triple checking that if we have any questions, if there's anything, as Kelly had mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out. If you were too afraid to have me read your question out loud, connect directly. Connect with Kelly on Twitter, reach out to her via email. And with that, we are just close to time. I want to thank you, Kelly, for taking the time today. I want to thank Build Your Dream Network, and thank you to all of our attendees who joined today's session and stayed on as part of this session.